Scott finally said what he shouldn't have. "From next month, I'll be living with Mom, so please clear out your room. I'll bring her directly here once she's discharged from the hospital. It's easier to manage the household when living together. However, seeing my mother-in-law every day means constantly receiving her snide remarks. My heart is already heavy." "I understand," I replied helplessly. Scott intends to force the issue of living with his mother by any means necessary. Rather than arguing and opposing him, I should secretly prepare. I have gained this wisdom over many years. Scott left the house, looking pleased and without suspicion. This is my strategy. It's so simple, I almost laughed. Hours later, while I was resting after tidying up, my phone rang loudly. It was a surprise call from Scott. "What is this?" "The house is empty. I, Charlotte Stewart, am a 45-year-old working mother who serves as a department head at a publishing house. My family consists of my husband and 2 children, a very ordinary household. When we got married, the concept of balancing work and family life was becoming popular. At that time, it was common for women to become housewives after marriage, but Scott supported my decision to work. In response, I have devoted myself to my job, household chores, and childcare since the birth of our children. However, recently, I felt the limit of this burden deepening. My mother-in-law, Michelle, who had always opposed my employment, has recently started to complain. "Charlotte, how long do you intend to keep working? You're neglecting your husband and being an irresponsible daughter-in-law." In our time, work came second, and a wife's duty was to devote herself to the family, she said. "Not only have I been committed to my job, but I've also been diligent in housekeeping and childcare. I felt this was a way to repay Scott for allowing me to work. As a result, both my daughter and son began to help out around the house. My daughter folds the laundry and irons, while my son cleans the bath and fills the tub every day. When I return home, the children have already prepared everything so that I only need to manage the meal preparation and cleanup. I am grateful to them for this arrangement. However, despite both of us working, Scott does not help at all. I've asked him several times to assist with household chores, but his response is always the same. I allowed you to continue your job. Are you trying to make me do the housework because you want to ease your own burden without fulfilling your duties as a wife? You're being pampered. Additionally, each time this happens, he reports to my mother-in-law, and I receive cold words from her. Scott is the main breadwinner of the house, right? Why would you make him do the housework? That's why it's said that working women are not good. Understand? You're the one demanding to work. Comprehend that. Lately, perhaps my mother-in-law has too much free time. Every night, such unpleasant calls come in. Both my children and I are tired of the frequency and content of these calls. Recently, my children often pretend they are calling me to hang up the phone. Indeed, I'm grateful that I was allowed to work, but why must I be criticized so much? I'm handling both housework and childcare alone. Even my mother-in-law should understand how hard it is to balance housework and childcare. What does she want from me? Currently, I am under considerable stress. Having my children on my side is my only comfort. This feeling is due to issues related to Scott's salary. In fact, Scott's salary is not very high, rather, it's on the lower end. He failed to find a good job initially and managed to get a position at a small company through relatives. If he had strived, I would have supported him without complaint, despite the low income. However, Scott was disappointed with his employment through connections. At first, he often complained I should have worked at a much larger and more prestigious company. He just did the work he was told to do and neglected efforts for promotion or to find another job. If he really had the skills, he would have continued to learn and upgrade his skills while working and made efforts to find a new job. But Scott neglected such efforts. As a result, his salary has remained limited to minor raises, with his performance pay and commissions always minimal. On the other hand, the company where I work is a major domestic firm that established maternity and paternity leave systems early on, and has continued stable management even during economic bubbles, never reducing salaries. Currently, I have been promoted to department head and have successfully managed numerous contracts and projects. As a result, I earn considerably more than Scott. Additionally, my children are under my care, and I directly set aside their tuition fees from my salary. I have made the most of the corporate benefits of a large company. Looking back, even when I was on unpaid maternity leave, we lived off my savings. It would have been impossible to cover the household expenses, including those of our children, with just Scott's salary. I have never received any contribution towards household expenses from Scott, and there are no records of any transfers from him. He probably allowed me to continue working because he wanted to rely on my salary. This thought has been growing stronger recently. I suspect that our post-marriage life has been largely financed by my earnings. To verify this suspicion, I checked my bank account. Housing expenses, utilities, food, and the children's educational expenses. I've paid for all of them. There's not a single deposit from Scott. All I could do was laugh tiredly. Scott's salary is spent on his hobbies and sending money to his mother. I've been grateful that Scott allowed me to continue working and have taken on both household chores and childcare. However, looking at the current situation, I pay all the living expenses while Scott freely spends his own salary. As the main financial supporter, I can say that I am the pillar of the family. Scott can afford to act freely because I cover the living expenses, and any favor of letting me work has been fully repaid. Yet, Scott always says, "I'm supporting the family. If you have a complaint, you can leave." On what basis does he make such claims? He might be under the mistaken impression that he's handling the living expenses while freely spending his own salary. It's completely baffling and incomprehensible. Sometimes I think about the outcome if I took the children and left the house, excluding all living expenses I've been covering. Or if I confronted him with this bank account and ordered him to leave the house, would Scott obediently comply? However, claiming himself as the pillar of the household, he might report me again to his mother. Does his mother understand the difference in our incomes? No, if she did, she wouldn't make such sarcastic remarks. She must think of him as a wonderful son who supports the family and has graciously allowed me to work. How would she react if she knew the truth about our incomes? Perhaps she would turn against Scott and come to my side. However, I want to avoid such a situation. What would become of Scott and his mother if I left? Sometimes, fed up with her harsh words, I find myself pondering this. While I was lost in these thoughts, my mother-in-law fell at home and injured her leg. She will need to be hospitalized for a while for treatment and rehabilitation. Since my father-in-law passed away before our marriage and she lived alone, either Scott or I would need to take care of her. Why are you leaving me to suffer? Hurry to the hospital. My leg hurts so much I can't move, and there's a lot I need to ask of you. She called me immediately during her hospitalization. When I answer the phone, she only demands things bring this. I want that. When I tell her I'm at work, she berates me fiercely. Because of my busy work schedule, I've decided to leave her care to Scott. The cold remarks from her due to my job are particularly stressful. Now, I think the best solution is to have Scott go to the hospital and placate his mother. When I ask Scott to take care of his mother, he immediately complains. "Why don't you look after Mom, Charlotte? I'm working too," he says. Despite being her son, he tries to push all the responsibility onto me. I think he should handle it himself, at least for the first few times. Suppressing my feelings, I respond, "I'm also working, and there are household chores. If you could help with the housework, I could go too. I think your mother would be happier to see you there." This is the truth. My mother-in-law may think of harassing her daughter-in-law as a way to relieve stress, but when mobility is limited, it's better to think positively and speak positively. For various reasons, I have been intentionally avoiding caring for my mother-in-law. On the other hand, I take care to wash and fold her laundry neatly and pack it in her bag. When she requests shopping, I pay close attention to the specific products she wants. I don't mind if these are seen as Scott's achievements, even if I am the one who is criticized. Right now, I especially want to avoid hearing her sarcasm. Fortunately, my predictions were correct. Day by day, my mother-in-law greets Scott with a smile. Being pampered by her son seems to greatly please a mother with her personality. Having her beloved son nearby seems to make her happier than making sarcastic remarks. She eagerly awaits Scott's visits every evening after work, looking forward to their conversations. She hands the shopping list to Scott, and since her hospitalization, she hasn't called me even once. Seeing her smile, Scott feels he is doing good deeds, and he returns home in a good mood. At night, when Scott comes home, he passes me the laundry and shopping lists without complaining as before. Although I receive some grumbles from Scott when handing over her belongings, I still manage to live my days peacefully. That's enough for me. Right now, I am determined to avoid my mother-in-law's sarcasm at all costs. Sometimes, I mutter to myself in the middle of the night, if only I could live in peace for a little while longer. However, the injuries my mother-in-law sustained at her age are likely to be prolonged. I strongly urged Scott to encourage her rehabilitation, but she often neglected it, looking forward to her son's visits. As a result, by the time her injuries healed, her leg strength had already declined. Scott goes to the hospital in the evening after work, but until then, my mother-in-law simply waits, abandoning rehabilitation and just anticipating her son's visit. She has grown fond of her son's care, and Scott has become accustomed to her various requests. Although it's rare for me to be called directly, I am actually the one doing the laundry. Daily chores like shopping and preparing snacks have become routine. My mother-in-law imposes household tasks on me, and she just enjoys pleasant conversations with her son. I'm grateful I don't have to meet her directly, but it's still exhausting. Her demands are many, especially shopping, which is very time-consuming. I understand that you need to distract yourself from boredom, but why do you need so many things? Living alone becomes even more difficult when mobility is impaired. My mother-in-law must feel this too. At that time, she made a significant request to Scott. "Oh, I can't use my leg well anymore. Shopping and cooking are difficult. Scott, don't leave your mom alone." Of course, Scott supports her. "That's a good idea. Let's live together. It will be more convenient for you if Charlotte takes care of you." These two decided to live together without considering my opinion. Scott finally said what he shouldn't have. "From next month, I'll be living with Mom, so please clear out your room. I'll bring her directly here once she's discharged from the hospital. It's easier to manage the household when living together. But that's only from the perspective of the mother-in-law. Every day, facing my mother-in-law would only result in receiving her snide remarks. My heart is already heavy. I understand, I replied helplessly. Scott intends to force the issue of living with his mother by any means necessary. Rather than arguing and opposing him, I should secretly prepare. I have gained this wisdom over many years. Caught between the excitement of Scott and my mother-in-law about the cohabitation, I was considering my escape options. I have a personal room in our home where I gather and study business-related documents. This room contains many books and files. It serves as a study and a workspace, and it is an essential space for the current me. However, Scott has demanded that I give up that room. Losing that room could disrupt my work, potentially causing me to come home even later. Alone, looking at the bookshelf, I muttered to myself, what should I do with these books and documents? It would be a big problem if they were discarded or damaged. Considering living with my mother-in-law, it's clear that these items should not stay at home. It may sound like something out of a TV show, but there really is a risk of the books and documents being thrown away. Especially, the items that are known to be valuable to me are often the first to be tampered with. If I say something, my mother-in-law will feign ignorance and seek Scott's help. Oh, I didn't know these were important documents. Oh, Scott, I'm not at fault yet Charlotte is mad at me. Help me. Once we start living together, there will be no place for me to rest in this house. Continuing to work while being constantly blamed, my spirit will wear thin. What should I do? In this house. Because my mother-in-law is coming to this house, I am. Suddenly, an idea struck me. Why hadn't I realized this simple solution earlier? It seems I was more exhausted than I thought from dealing with her cold remarks and taking over caregiving. It felt as though the fog that had been clouding my vision was gradually lifting. Right, there's absolutely no reason for me to hold back. Why didn't I see such a simple thing before? I murmured and immediately began to prepare. Time passed, and the day of my mother-in-law's discharge arrived. Scott had taken the day off and seemed excited from the morning. Look, from now on, I'll properly take care of Mom. I won't let you do what I've been doing while she was hospitalized, Scott declared, and I quickly changed the subject. That's right, take this. Your mother has been hospitalized for quite a while, after all. The hospital food is bland and not very filling, so she must have been unsatisfied. Since discharge procedures and packing will take us close to lunchtime, why don't you take her out for some delicious food? It's a special day off, and a drive just for the two of you would be nice, right? I'm sure she will enjoy it, I suggested, handing Scott a larger amount of cash than usual. While Scott did have an allowance for living expenses, the amount I gave him this time was significantly more than his usual monthly allowance. Scott was thrilled by the unexpected windfall. Wow, you really think on your feet, don't you? Then I'll use this money to take Mom out for a drive. I'll let you know what we decide about dinner. You make sure everything at home is ready for Mom to be comfortable. Scott left the house happily, without any suspicion. This was my strategy. It was so simple, it almost made me laugh. This should buy me some time. I was eager for Scott and his mother to return home. While waiting, I proceeded to organize the house. I needed to finish arranging everything before Scott and his mother returned. A few hours later, while I was resting after finishing the organization, my phone rang loudly, It was a surprise call from Scott. "What's this?" "The house is empty." In fact, while Scott was out picking up his mother, I had moved my belongings to a new house I had rented. Of course, I had left behind only Scott's few personal items and his mother's bedding. "Oh, you're back already? You said to clear out the room, so I cleared out the room and the living room to make sure your mother could be comfortable. Now, you two can enjoy your time together," I replied calmly. Scott exploded in anger. "This isn't a joke. There's nothing left in the living room or kitchen. How could you do this when I'm the one supporting us?" The familiar line was thrown out again. How foolish to believe that he could demonstrate superiority. No, in reality, I was the one supporting the family, and that included you. You've been spending your salary on allowances for your mother and on your own pleasures, haven't you? And even asking for personal spending money from the household budget. How can you claim that you are supporting the family with such actions? Scott was surprised by my challenge but quickly retorted. His theory was completely nonsensical. "Quiet. As a man, I am the head of the house. You, as my wife, should obey. Put the furniture back immediately." "No, I won't. The living room furniture and the kitchen appliances were all purchased with my salary. Don't worry, the children are with me. I've paid for the rent, utilities, and groceries. In short, I am the pillar of this house. Why did you proceed to live with your mother without consulting me? I can't stay with someone who acts so unilaterally. As you wished, from now on you'll have to fend for yourself," I said. And it seemed like Scott had an epiphany. "Wait, what about the rent for this house?" "Yes, I will cover all payments until the end of this month, but from next month, I'll pass that responsibility to you. The payments for electricity, gas, and internet have already had their direct debit stopped, so you'll need to manage those yourself," I said. It seemed Scott finally understood the situation. In response, his mother exploded in anger, raising her voice in a frenzy. "I can't believe I have such a terrifying daughter-in-law. What are you thinking, using the fact you work to pressure him? Enough is enough. I plan to live here luxuriously with Scott." At that moment, I wondered if she truly understood the reality of Scott's income. Living a luxurious life would indeed be wonderful. However, whether that's possible depends on your son's income. "Anyway, this is goodbye," I said calmly. "Wait, Charlotte, where are you?" Scott asked, but I hung up the phone and immediately blocked both his and his mother's contacts. What follows is, as you might imagine. With Scott's salary from a small company where he showed little initiative, the amount left after paying rent and utilities was very minimal. In a house too large for a family of 4, Scott and his mother frequently clashed. "What is this? What kind of meal is this? Don't you care to feed your parents something decent?" His mother would scream. "Be quiet. If you have a complaint, make something yourself. You skip rehab and hate walking. You don't help with the housework at all. You're just a burden," Scott would retort. Thus, their lives seemed to be filled with tension and dissatisfaction. Due to neglecting rehab, his mother's leg strength had deteriorated, and she had become completely resistant to any form of physical therapy at home. Her inability to move as smoothly as before likely contributed to significant frustration. The woman who once showed deep affection for Scott had transformed, making unreasonable demands. Her change might be a symptom of early-stage dementia. Her pension alone places them in a very tough situation. If they move to a smaller, more suitable residence for 2, their life would likely become much easier. However, Scott doesn't seem to come up with such creative solutions. Since I cut off communication with Scott and his mother, I haven't received any messages from them. The children also blocked Scott and his mother's contacts when we started a new chapter as a family. Currently, Scott doesn't know where we live, and he has completely lost any means to seek help from us. If this situation continues, their living conditions will likely become unsustainable. With the help of my children, I've been able to secure a decent income and a nice apartment. The children each have their own rooms, and I use a spacious room as both my bedroom and workspace. The rent is a bit high, but the amount saved by separating from Scott allows us to comfortably afford it. Previously, the children suffered from their father's demeaning words towards me, but now they are enjoying a free and comfortable life. They are more serious about household chores now and take responsibility for their tasks without being criticized by their father, willingly helping around the house. In such an environment where gratitude and praise are naturally extended when children help, I am truly relieved that we haven't gone down the wrong path. Today, after another busy day, it's time to return to the apartment where my beloved children are waiting. Following these developments, I sent Scott a divorce petition through a lawyer. Despite me having supported the family financially for a long time, he and his mother had nearly depleted their earnings. This is a sufficient reason to file for divorce. Scott refused the divorce and made various excuses, but my lawyer quickly dismissed his claims. Abandoning family responsibilities, not contributing financially, and verbal abuse are considered economic abuse. Under these circumstances, if taken to court, Scott's chances of winning are extremely low. The court granted me custody of the children. Furthermore, I did not request alimony or property division, choosing instead to waive those rights. Because the savings I accumulated have all been earmarked for the children's future education, it would be completely unacceptable for me to give any of that money to Scott or his mother. My car is in my name, and fortunately, the house we lived in was a rental property, which helped us avoid further complications that could have arisen had we owned a home. Now, without facing criticism from anyone, I am able to focus on my work. This allows me to provide the kind of activities my children desire, for which I am grateful. Additionally, with the college funds that I have been gradually saving over time, combined with future income, I anticipate being able to cover at least the cost of my children's university education. Let's give today our all. I motivate myself as a